Hello everybody, it's Whiskey11 and welcome back to the Gaming Lounge. In this video we are going to be flying the F14B Tomcat and we are going to be talking about Case 1 recoveries aboard the John C. Stennis in this glorious, glorious aircraft. There are a couple of major differences between the F-14 and the F-A-18C Hornet in terms of how it behaves around the boat, a couple of differences that we'll talk about. But the important part to remember is that the pattern is basically the same. The pattern starts off in the upwind phase that's headed in the same direction as the boat at 300 to 350 knots indicated. That is going to be at approximately 800 to 1,000 feet in altitude. The closer you can get to 800 feet and 350 knots, the better. Our brake turn is going to be approximately 1% of our speed in terms of G. So if we're at 350 knots, we're looking for about a 3.5 G turn. The entry into the brake is always with the wings swept backwards. Once we start our brake, we are going to deploy the speed brakes. We are going to set the wings to auto, which means that they will sweep outward because that's what the wing sweep program commands them to do. At 250 knots, we drop the landing gear. At 225 knots, we drop the flaps. And at rollout to level on our downwind phase, we are going to activate the DLC. The DLC is direct lift control. Basically, DLC are a series of flaps on the top of the wings that extend and retract at the pilot command it, and what it does is it will add or reduce lift to help the aircraft either gain or lose altitude, or not lose as much altitude is probably more accurate than gain. And this will allow you to adjust your location in the flight path, the glide slope, without impacting the angle of attack of the aircraft and thus, changing on-speed AOA. With that, we also want to talk about on-speed AOA as well. On-speed AOA in this aircraft is exceptionally hard to control and maintain if you are not Johnny on the spot with it. The Tomcat does not have the same behavior as the Hornet does with regards to maintaining on-speed angle of attack no matter what. That's because the F-14 does not have the fly-by-wire setup, which means that the trim on the F-14 Tomcat for on-speed angle of attack does not hold that angle of attack no matter what. In the Hornet, you can just set the trim and the brake so that your on-speed angle of attack, then all you have to worry about is the throttles. In the F-14, it's a lot more involved. This aircraft predates the fly-by-wire systems on board the Hornet by a good while. And as a result of that, it can be a little bit more challenging to get this aircraft lined up behind the boat. So once you're on speed angle of attack in that downwind portion, as we start we want to be about 600 feet in altitude on speed angle of attack before we start our turn to the base recovery course to line up for the carrier. As we start that turn, we want to start it at approximately abeam the ship, and it'll be a 30-degree turn coming into the landing. The final portion of the F-14's trip to the boat is going to be the most exciting. The F-14 also has a couple of other difficulties, challenges behind the boat that the Hornet does not have. One of them is this Dutch roll. If you've ever seen an F-14 Tomcat, or you've seen the movie Top Gun and you watch Merlin come in for his landing, you'll notice that the F-14 tends to have this at low speeds. You'll get a wing rock effect, and that is a feedback loop that is associated with low speed handling and how it impacts the vertical tail surfaces. And thus you get a combination of yaw and roll behind the boat at really slow speeds. It can be very, very difficult to control. And my best recommendation is if you get into those situations and it gets really, really bad, you're starting to get pilot-induced oscillation, just power out. Don't even attempt to land. It's too dangerous. But there is a little bit of Dutch roll that will happen behind the boat, and that is exceptionally challenging, especially for lineup. The other thing is that the HUD on the F-14 it has a really slow refresh rate compared to that of the Hornet. It was never intended to be the primary flight instrument for the Tomcat, and as a result of that, some of the items on it can basically be ignored. I mean, I find the information that it presents quite useful, but if you talk to the real F-14 pilots, many of them just turn the thing off, and they just flew with the angle of attack indexer on the left side of the window frame and the stick and rudder feel. Well, we don't have that pilot machine interface, so it's a little hard for us to do that in the sim, but that doesn't mean that we can't at least try and do things correctly. What it means, though, is that you do need to pay more attention to instrumentation than a real pilot would, and you also need to pay attention to the ball. So let's go ahead and get into the sim here. Again, we're going to be on the Persian Gulf instant action mission for Case 1 recovery with the Tomcat. So let's go ahead and hit start. I'm going to go ahead and disable the anti-skid and spoilers and turn on some cockpit lighting here because for whatever reason this game has exceptionally dark cockpits. We're going to go ahead and set everything up here, so we got to sweep our wings back because the F-14 in the pattern always sweeps its wings back and then extends them. There's a good reason for that. It has to do with aerobraking. The delta wing configuration bleeds off speed in a turn much faster.
12 o'clock, 5 miles.
Thanks, Jester. The delta wing configuration bleeds off speed in a turn much quicker than a standard one does. Okay, so we've got our radios are set. Let's check. We got our hook is down. Our wings are swept back. We've let the boat know that we are inbound. Of course, all of this is going to end up changing. Going to go ahead and pause it real quick, and we'll talk about HUD symbology as we get past all of these markers here. Okay, so the F-14's HUD has a couple of interesting points. This is in the landing mode. You need to be in the landing mode if you plan on seeing things. You can see here in the center we have the total velocity indicator. It has a different name on the F-14. I don't remember what it is. We can see here is the aircraft attitude. We can see the E-bracket is all the way up here. We can ignore that for this portion of it. On the left side we have our vertical speed indicator. You can see we are dropping in altitude very slowly, about 250 feet per minute. On the right-hand side, we have our current altitude listed in 200-foot increments. So we are at about 700 feet, which means we need to be climbing, not sinking. We can also see here that we have the lines here for the ICLS system. We can see we're lined up left, and we are a little below the glide slope. We're a little bit left of the glide path towards the deck. This is irrelevant for right now because we're not lined up behind the boat, but it always shows up there. You can see the HUD tape up at the top, the direction tape rather. And the other thing to note is that this HUD is depressed 5 degrees. So you can see at horizon it says we're at nose up 5 degrees attitude. That's something important to remember. So let's go ahead and we'll continue our flight here. We are slow, so we need to add some speed. That's part of the reason why we're not maintaining our altitude. You can see here we're about 270 knots, which is really too slow. Thankfully, the F-14 adds speed relatively quickly. Okay, let's level out again. As we pass by the boat, we want to double check and make sure that the deck is clear. And it is. Alright, this might be a bit of a slow entry into the break then. So the break normally happens 15 to 17 seconds after you pass by the boat. From my experience, that's going to be at approximately 2.5 miles. We can see that distance to TACAN down here. This is our navigation, one of our navigation tools. You can see here the indicator is pointing to the TACAN is behind us. And we can see here is the distance to the TACAN. We are at exactly 1 nautical mile away from the boat right now, which means that we need to go just a little bit further here. We're looking for about 2.5 is basically what we're looking at. Once we get into the break, we will set our wings to auto. We will deploy our speed brakes and cut our throttles to idle. Okay, we're going a little bit quick here, and we are there. So go ahead and set our wings to auto, set our 60-degree bank here, deploy our speed brakes. I'm also adding some trim, elevator trim into this because that helps. 250 knots, gear coming down. Looking for the Ticonderoga there, 225 knots, flaps coming down. As we start to roll out, we need to add a little bit of power here. Okay. Now we're going to activate our DLC. DLC has been activated. You can see it there on the wingtips if you look in the mirror. And you can see that's up, this is down, so if they go up, that means you're going to drop in altitude. Okay, I'm going to double check our trim here, our trim indicators down here. I'm looking for about 15 degrees of angle of attack. We're basically there. You can see how the aircraft is maintaining its pitch attitude, but it is not maintaining its on-speed angle of attack attitude, and that is one of those differences between the Tomcat and the Hornet. Okay, so we're going to trim down just a little bit. We're 600 feet here, so we're good on altitude. Let's go ahead and pitch down just a little bit and add just a little bit of speed. Maybe use our DLC to bring things up. There we go. Okay. So we are going to start our turn. Yeah, we need to trim down just a little bit. So we're going to start our turn here as soon as we basically get to the Ticonderoga. And once you turn, you want to make sure that you add in a little bit of power, because you're going to lose power. Again, 30-degree bank, coming left. This is a stick and rudder aircraft, which means you need to add rudder input. Okay, we're going to go ahead and pull back on the stick just a little bit here, a little bit less power so that we can drop just a little bit in altitude. Okay, we're a little high compared to the ICLS needle. Obviously, we're going to be way left for lineup here. Probably turned in just a smidge too late. Okay, so we're a little early on the altitude warning here, but that's okay. As we start to roll out behind the boat, we want to slowly reduce the throttle so that we don't get the big pitch up moment. Keep our bank up as we come around. Okay. And start to add a little bit of power, and now we get to play we're low. There's the ball. Okay. A little high, and 2 taps at the ramp, go to full throttle to military power.
Man, you owned that 3-wire.
Heck yeah, I own that 3-wire. Okay, raise the hook, raise our flaps, set our wings to sweep, activate nose wheel steering, and we're going to steer off of the boat, the landing area. In this case, I point rearward here so that I can see oncoming aircraft as I taxi to the rear of the boat. Ideally, you also want to go ahead and, oversweep your wings at this point, but we're going to go ahead and look one real quick. We got a handy-dandy feature here on our knee board. You can see that we have a 25-second groove time. That's kind of long in the groove, 3-wire. And you can see we were on speed pretty much the entire way to the deck. We got a little bit, I believe, slow at the ramp, and then we hit the deck, and that's what that red portion is, at the deck. But overall, a pretty solid 3-wire all the way down. We were pretty much in the glide slope. Like I said, we got a little low there at the middle, but easy correct with the DLC. And yeah, that was a pretty great landing for me, not gonna lie. Anyway, I hope this video has been really helpful to you guys. Again, the F-14 can be a bit of a bear when it comes to landing behind the boat. It's just trying to maintain on-speed angle of attack and trying to manage DLC and everything else. It can be very difficult. One thing I didn't mention is ball calls. So at 3/4 of a mile, you are required to call the ball. The nice part about the Tomcat is you have a Rio that should be doing that. Basically, once you see the ball, you just get on the intercom and yell ball, and it's his responsibility to radio the LSO and let him know, Tomcat 11 ball 5.7, and then you're clear from there. So the ball call gets handled by the dude that actually is intended to operate the radios, not us. That's what I like about it. Anyway, I'm Whiskey11. I hope this video has been helpful for you. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.